Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
Craftsman Days are here at Lowe's with big savings on the tools you need. Save $100 on the Craftsman V26 Tool Power Tool Combo Kit, now at $199. No matter what the project is, Craftsman's high-quality, high-performance products empower you to build on. Visit Lowe's and check out the full line of Craftsman tools today. Valid through 7/9 while supplies last. Selection varies by location. Maximum initial battery voltage measured without a workload is 20 volts. Nominal voltage is 18.
I'm Leanne Johnson, and I am an actor and filmmaker.
Hello, and welcome to Art, the podcast where we get up close and personal as we get to know women from around the world of visual arts. I'm Chris Stafford, and this is Season 3, Episode 13. My guest is the Canadian-American actor and filmmaker Leanne Johnson, whose philosophy is founded on seeking understanding and sharing truth through bold characters and stories to redefine the narrative about women in film and our world. Since graduating from Alberta University in 2011 with a bachelor's in nutrition and food science, Leanne has consistently produced a repertoire of diverse and dynamic performances. In May 2025, she made her directorial debut with A Tree Falls in the Forest, which speaks to her raison d'être as a storyteller. Her performance in the 2024 action crime movie Extraction USA resonates with her own story of humble beginnings, growing up the daughter of immigrants in rural Alberta. Her credits range from NBC's Chicago PD to Dracula, The Count's Kin, to Chasing Rabbits, Oreganda, and Idle Girl. She's garnered multiple Best Actress awards, including Chasing Rabbits in 2022, Oreganda in 2024, plus Best Supporting Actress in Greek Fire Demon Spirit 2023. As well as her versatility on screen, Leanne is a personal trainer, having graduated from the National Academy of Sports Training in Lafayette, Indiana. Her lifelong love of sports is evident in her range of skills, including snowboarding, martial arts, and roller derby, where she's known as Chariot of Fire. Leanne embraces her queer identity and stereotype-bending on-screen performances while staying true to her faith, which remains at her core. Leanne is currently based in Indiana and is a proud mother of 2 daughters. Leanne, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Which part of the world are you in right now?
I'm in the Midwest in the US of A. Indiana, to be specific.
Isn't that a flyover state, Indiana?
It's the crossroads. Indianapolis is the crossroads of Indiana. Yeah, it's a lot of people from all over kind of, are kind of stop in this hub, but you can basically get anywhere in the Midwest from Indiana. Yeah.
And you can go back north to Canada, because that's where you're from originally. Do you make that trip very often?
I am from Western Canada, so that's a 23-hour drive from where I'm at straight. So if I were to go straight north, I would be into the Ontario, but that's not home for me. So I do not make that trek very often. No.
Do you miss it? Do you miss the Canadian life, especially now in these very interesting times we live in?
I miss the mountains and the fresh air and, there's wildfires now, but I think what I miss about Canada most is there's just this different feel about it, this openness, this vastness. I'm close to British Columbia, Alberta, and so I was right along the Rocky Mountain Belt, and so I really on a regular basis got to see how incredible our world is and how big it is and how small we are. And it gives you a perspective to be thankful and to take care of what you have, your environment, other people around you. There's just this different type of community there.
Well, I shouldn't go any further without congratulating you on just wrapping on your directorial debut. A Tree Falls in the Forest.
That's right.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How does it feel?
Incredible. It also feels very natural for me as a director and as an actor director. It felt like I was just where I needed to be in that space. So that was an incredible feeling, and I'm thankful for that.
How about the whole process, though? Because now you know what it feels like from both sides of the camera, but I feel being a quote-unquote a filmmaker now and putting all those pieces together and wearing the top dog hat, how did you cope with the pressure?
Oh, the pressure. I think that my experience as an indie filmmaker and also my experience as an actor, I'm an award-winning actor. So, and I don't say that as like, hey, look at me. I say that as I've really emotionally stretched and been in situations that were very challenging in terms of performance. And then as a filmmaker, having produced a film from scratch, co-directing very small micro budget projects, I've just really been through the ringer. And it was one of those experiences in pre-production where I was contracted to write a film. And the producer wanted to make sure that we had secure IP, which is intellectual property. So there wasn't going to be any questions throughout the process or any legal issues with IP. And so from the very point of putting a pen to paper and then, basically stepping in front of the camera and picking the shots, like I had a lot of creative autonomy, and my producer and my creative team really trusted me, and I thrive in that space. When I am trusted to shepherd something or to hold a vision, I feel the responsibility of that, but I also follow through with that because I do my best to say what I'm going to, or do what I say, and, and follow through. And I think that is something that comes intrinsic to who I am, and it makes it an important quality of a director.
Well, I know you're an excellent communicator, but I read somewhere that you're considered the Swiss Army knife on every film set. My goodness, that's quite something, Leanne.
That's really funny. Yes, I'm very versatile, and by that I mean why I feel like the title filmmaker is more important to me than specifying director, producer, key set PA, like whatever it is. I really feel like as a filmmaker, as an actor, the core of it is I'm a storyteller. And if there's a story that you hear my Canadian accent, story, if there's a story that I feel passionate about, and typically those revolve around women's stories. And I feel like our representation of women, the amount of stories and narratives involving women are improving over the first, essentially the 1900s. But those types of stories that I really connect with, and I feel like other people may benefit from, or that it opens up a perspective, or that it represents something true that is often suppressed. That's the type of film or project or story that I want to get involved with. And whatever that team needs, they might need a director, they might need a producer, they might need an actor, they might need a production assistant or a unit production manager. If I am passionate about the story, and I feel like I have strengths and skills that I can apply to that team, it may look different on every production, but I ultimately want that story to be told. And so I'm willing to learn something new, but also apply skills that I have to that team in order for that goal to be accomplished.
Well, you do wear many hats, don't you? Both on a personal front, you're a mother, a wife, and all the different things that you can do professionally. Where do you feel you're zooming in right now, Leanne, or is that transitory?
As a professional, where am I zooming in right now? It's interesting having directed my feature film that I felt like I was very natural in terms of leading and and by doing that as a director, it felt very rewarding for me on a production level and a creative level. And I think that as a director, I contribute much more to the overall project, because I have qualities of leadership, I have qualities of communication, I have qualities of empathy, I have qualities of conflict resolution and technical understanding that make it easier for me to treat people with kindness and also make decisions when they need to be made, and be willing to assume the consequences, whether positive or negative, of those decisions. And I'm okay with not being liked. I think that's an important quality of a director. I think that's something that actors struggle with to an extent. And so when I think about it from a team-based perspective, as a community perspective, I think my strengths on a production level really lie as a director. But personally, as an artist, as a human being, as a person walking in this world, acting is the one art form for me that consistently challenges me to be humble, to seek perspective, to fail, and to really connect with the world around me and with people. And so those are almost two separate things. So when I'm on set and I'm an actor director, meaning I'm directing, but then I can step in to a scene or a couple scenes or almost an entire film as an actor, all I'm doing is reducing the communication channel between a director and an actor. And I'm one person. And so the efficiency of that is quite impressive. So that felt like a really great fit for me. And I know that a lot of wonderful actors such as Jodie Foster have done that in their careers. So I know that it's possible.
For someone who used to ride horses for a living, we always used to say that horses are a great leveler, but acting too is a great leveler, isn't it?
Tell me more. Like, what do you mean by leveler?
Well, it brings you back down to earth. It makes you humble. Yes. You learn about all those interpersonal skills because you get to understand the impact that you individually have on so many people.
Yeah. And you cope with a lot of failure.
Exactly. Yeah. And you fall off the horse.
You do a lot, 9 out of 10 times. Yes. You build resilience as an actor. I once heard to be an actor is to have the heart of a rose, but the skin of a rhino. And I think that that's very accurate. And that it's not for everyone, at least within film. It's a little bit more in the limelight, there's more visibility. And so, you do experience potentially more, what's the word? When people make judgments about you, or they think certain things about you. The word is escaping me right now, but you run the risk of being more visible and having to deal with that from the public. So.
At first glance, I'm going to say you're a Leo. What star sign are you?
So my sun is Capricorn and my moon is Sagittarius. So I'm very hardworking and diligent, but then I'm also very free-spirited and spontaneous. So that kind of reflects my German-Irish mix, actually.
Quite a combination you've got going there.
Yes, yeah. It's the duality makes some days difficult. So I'm always learning within myself. My friend said it's a twin spirit. She said when somebody is a twin spirit is somebody who is spirited in almost two seemingly opposite ways, whether it's creative and logical. And yet you're always constantly seeking a coexistence within yourself. And so you're a lifelong learner. And I think that that's quite accurate to the position.
You're not a Leo.
I am far from a Leo.
Are you going to tell me what you are? Because then I can look you up.
Oh, yeah. Capricorn sun and Sagittarius moon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you follow those?
I have friends they've asked me, like, what sign are you? And I'm like, well, I'm a Capricorn. And they're like, nah. And then they look up and be like, well, your sun sign, your main sun is Capricorn, but your moon, I guess, is basically like two dichotomous personalities. But it's a little bit, I guess, more nuanced. And then if you're following the Chinese zodiac, the year I born makes me a fire tiger.
Ooh.
Yeah. And it's like, there's like, your basic zodiac, but then Chinese calendars like operate a little bit differently. And then every decade or something, there's a unique year, and the year I was born makes me a fire tiger. And I was like, oh, that's interesting and very accurate. But yeah, I'm always curious about it. I think that our world is so, and the universe is, and God is just so huge. It's beyond our comprehension. I think that there's a lot to learn from everything, the world around us. So,
well, speaking of a lot to learn, you have actually a lot of skills to your bow right now, lots of different arrows, and I love that there's lots of sports in there, because pro sports is my background.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yes, and you've got horseback riding in there, you've got basketball, you've got I don't know, martial arts as well, some snowboarding. Where does that interest and love come from for sports itself to add those to your inventory in this profession?
Huge, I think. I grew up in very small rural communities, and then I moved to an oil town in high school. And so I was in constantly male dominated environments in sports. I played on an all boys hockey team, all boys soccer team. I related more to activities that were very physical. And so I got along well with boys when I was younger. And so I did a lot of like snowboarding and mountain biking. And it was just at the time, like there just wasn't a lot of encouragement or acceptance of, I skateboarded, I played roller derby for a decade. Like I've done a lot of very physical and dangerous sports, but at the core of it, I just learned that, if you want to be successful, you have to work hard. And if you want to get better, you've got to practice. And then you have to understand that you're a part of a team. And I have a strong affinity towards team sports, which is why that makes me work well on a film crew, as I understand that everybody has certain roles on the team or within the crew, and no role, even the director, is better than any other person. It's just different, with different responsibilities and different authority. And if the film or the goal or the team is going to be successful, everyone has to learn to work together. And if it's one sport that I learned was the most powerful in terms of my overall growth as a human being, it was roller derby. Because if you do not know how to communicate, you will lose. Teams that have the strongest, best, fastest players will lose to a team that is more communicative. And that's really what it comes down to, is communicating and understanding how other people communicate and learning to listen and speak. And that's really a core of a successful team, I think, is the ability to communicate.
Totally. And then where did you learn your horseback riding?
So my horseback riding would be like basically beginner level. I haven't done like trained lesson. I've done a few train lessons in terms of horseback riding, but most of it was like trail riding in the Dominican bareback, like very, like we're just holding onto the horse's manes and going. And so I've done some of that, but I've not taken like formal lessons or as experienced as it sounds like you may have done growing up.
So any one of these, then you could call on these if you need to, if the role demanded it.
Yes. Yeah. And discipline yourself, like, with some film projects, you have a certain amount of time if you're preparing for a role to work on necessary skills that might be required. And so then you discipline yourself to practice and improve on that skill set. And I have that natural athletic ability and intrinsic determination. And so, I'll do what's required.
And you're motivated to keep fit.
I think on several aspects, like it's a way of protecting myself from injury. And also, fitness and moving and being active is something I believe that our bodies were just made to do. And it helps with mental health. It helps me to feel strong. And also, like, you got to carry equipment. You might have to carry a person. And I feel capable and am strong physically, that I want to make sure that I can assist and, be the best teammate I can.
What's your workout of choice now in sport when you have time?
I'd say my workout of choice has increasingly, like I do lift weights about 2-3 times a week in the gym, and I do, a cross training type regimen. But my consistent daily workout of choice has become more of that body weighted exercise, like Pilates or yoga. And I think because it activates your core, it teaches you your awareness of your body. A lot of people can't even do basic push-ups or pull-ups or planks. And those types of exercises are very functional to real life. And you don't need a lot of mass to be strong. You just need to know how to use your body to your advantage. And I think that's what I've learned over the past several years is flexibility, mobility, body weighted exercise and strength is overall helpful for injury prevention and overall strength for what I need. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it becomes more important as we get older, of course. Does a TRX feature in your life?
Does what?
A TRX.
I have done TRX. Yeah, I've done TRX, but no, it's not something I do regularly.
No? Okay, well, we can't compare notes then. That's that's particularly useful for a complete workout. I find, for everywhere.
Yes,
but I love the Pilates. So yeah, keep that going. That's life changing.
Thank you.
I want to talk about your ancestry. You mentioned lots of European ancestry there, and we do share the whole life story here. We start the arc back to the early beginnings, because I know in your repertoire you've got all kinds of accents too that you can call on. So are some of those more natural than others, or some you have to work on?
I think in terms of, again, like for me, accent work is just like working a muscle on your body. It's like if you need to develop something and you have, a foundation or a baseline, then if you work that enough, it'll get stronger and it'll get better. And I think accent work is similar. When I was younger, I used to watch a lot of movies, and I used to mimic accents and impersonations of people. And I just thought it was really fun. And I think that my brain at a very young age just started developing and stretching that muscle. So, it basically requires me to either have a conversation with somebody who's naturally has a particular accent, and I will start to kind of pick it up throughout a conversation. I'll listen to an audiobook in that particular accent. It's just observation. Honestly, it's observation and experimentation, and then you just kind of practice it. But I do know that it's harder for some people than others to do accent work. But I'm not a linguist expert or anything like that. But if I have enough time and practice, then I can nail an accent. And Helen Mirren once said, the best thing to do is to show up to set in accent and stay in accent if your character has an accent the entire time. And I did that one time with a role that required me to have a Cockney accent, and I practiced it a lot and listened to a lot of like radio, BBC radio, and was like, okay, what's the difference between this type of accent and a Cockney accent? I talked to a friend who had a bit of a Cockney accent and asked her to read my lines in her accent. And it was just a lot of observation and intention. And then I showed up to set and I just talked in this Cockney accent, and everybody on the cast thought I was from England. And and then I dropped out of accent after the last scene on the, last day of production. They're like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah, no, I and they were like, we thought you were totally.
Love it.
So that was a great compliment, but it took a lot of work, to be intentional with that accent work.
So when you're talking to someone then who tries to use her best British accent, can you just roll into that then by just talking to me?
I probably could try a little bit.
Would you by default go into that Cockney accent?
No, I don't think so. I think, let's see. And in terms of, I think this is also important for accent work, is because I'm from Canada, so everybody thinks I speak French. They're like, oh, you're from Canada, that means you speak French. I was like, no, I learned French all through school, and then we went to Ottawa, and they laughed at me. They were like, what are you doing? What are you trying to do, really? And then they'll speak to you in English because they're so offended that you would, try to, because there's just you can tell that there's just people who are actually, native speakers, and they will pick up on it. So it takes quite a time, I think, to assimilate into that. But to a regular American, they don't, they wouldn't really be able to tell if I was doing like a British accent, or something like that. They wouldn't know you're not from there.
Well, you could fall into any of these accents then by the time we finish this.
I mean, I could, but I don't know, like, what exactly.
Which part of England?
Yes, because it's huge. Like, and based on the different part. And I mean, what's your experience traveling across, your own country, and like, are the accents different? Because that's what I've heard is like, it's really individual. Yeah.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, I think in any country, and in Europe, in France and Italy, Germany, no matter where you go, there's a shift in local dialect wherever you go. Yeah. It's a skill, though, and you use it for voice work.
Yeah, like I don't do a lot of voiceover work, which I think voiceover actors do a lot more voice work, or, if they're not being, I do a lot of film projects in the Midwest, and not a lot of my film projects require me to have a British or an Australian or an accent, unless they've scripted a particular character that has that, but not in years. I don't think I've done a character that has had a specific accent. So, but I'm open to it.
Let's talk about ancestry. And, your family, obviously from Alberta, is where you grew up. But what's your family history and ancestry? Where in Europe?
So my mother and her family immigrated to Alberta when she was 2 years old from Germany. And she had 5 other siblings, and her, my grandparents basically didn't know any English. And my grandfather was, he's brilliant, but he couldn't find work in Alberta doing anything that, would require any real degree of intellect, because he couldn't speak English. And so he actually worked as a janitor for, years and years and years. And like when we uncovered some of the stuff he had several patented ideas and like really brilliant stuff in the house that we were like, this is incredible. And he was just working as a janitor, and they're growing food out of their own garden. But yeah, my mom told me that they immigrated from Germany because my grandfather did not want to participate in the war. So that was what she had told me was their main reason for immigrating.
And they chose Alberta.
Yeah, I don't know particularly why that was the province of choice for them, but that's where they ended up. So.
And how about on your dad's side?
My dad's side, his ancestry, so his father, my grandfather on my dad's side was from Ireland, and my grandmother was from Poland. And they ended up in, I think it was like North Dakota, USA. And then they also moved to Alberta and operated a farm. And my dad had told me that his great grandfather, it was because of the potato famine in Ireland that they had immigrated. And so that was, so I mean, I come from a family of immigrants, European immigrants. So.
Yeah. And lots of diversity there too. Mm-hmm. So did you learn any other language? Did you learn German?
No, I actually am not very good at learning languages. I can learn accents, but
that's interesting.
And it's interesting because when I go travel to somewhere like in Latin America or Mexico, the Latin American, basically people from Mexico will start speaking to me in Spanish because my accent after a couple of days there is so strong that they think I actually speak Spanish, but it's just the way that I'm saying it. But no, I don't speak any German, Irish, or Gaelic. Essentially, I don't know any of those other languages.
So what was childhood like for you then? What were your earliest memories of growing up in the cold, cold Canada?
Early memories with my grandparents was, working in their garden. So I had at a very young age, a connection with, growing my own food and where food came from, and that the earth, provided us with our needs. And then, in terms of being in the mountains, when we moved to the mountains, was I walked to school in several feet of snow. You know, they didn't shut down school for snow. They get the plows out at 4 a.m. and, you know, clear the roads, and you walk to school. And it was just a very tough, I didn't grow up very wealthy. We lived in a trailer park or a small home or a rental property. And so I just learned a lot of just work ethic and resilience, and you've independence, I guess, too, as well as a young person, and the power of creativity and play. And we didn't have all the devices that kids do nowadays that kind of feed creativity to you. You had to be creative yourself and really explore the world around you and go on adventures. And there's something really pure about that in childhood that I hope that we continue to recreate for our young generation. So,
what kind of activities then would you do with each of your parents, together or separately? What were you gravitating toward?
It's interesting because I have some memories of playing with my parents, but my parents had me, like my mom was 36 years old when she had me. And so my parents were more mature as, and I really played a lot by myself. I played with, in a stream or with friends or whatever. But if I could remember, like my dad, I think it was just playing catch with me or taking me to play shinny hockey, very basic type sports level activities. But most of my free play and creative play was around my peers or with a best friend or my sister or by myself.
So what were you gravitating towards then in school? Which subjects were catching your eye?
I always gravitated towards English. I gravitated towards anything that involved creative writing, reading. I also loved the sciences. I have a degree in science. And I think that I view science and art and writing and words very similarly. Like, to me, it's all a creative process, and it's design, and like even basic human anatomy and physiology, like the body is incredible, internally and externally. It's art, and it's also just amazing how we operate within our own system every day. We're this walking human, like living organism that is also strong and beautiful. And so I think that those were typically the two subjects that really fascinated me the most were writing and reading and English and learning how to communicate and how to express. And honestly, the earliest form of impactful education for me was second grade. First grade, I had a teacher that made fun of me because I couldn't spell words correctly that the other kids were able to spell very simply, but I couldn't. I had a hard time with spelling. And I remember him making fun of me in class because I couldn't spell a basic word. And then in my second grade, I had a teacher who gave me a dictionary. And then she gave me a thesaurus. And she said, now you can learn how to spell words. And I was fascinated that there were also other words that represented basic words. And so then began my creative exploration of creative writing. In second grade, I was writing my own book series called Journey Through the Tundra. So it was a very impactful experience for me from first grade to second grade. Was we can either ridicule and try to conform people to fit some type of system, or we can actually see the individual and empower them with tools to then make an area that was a weakness an incredible strength. And I'll never forget that. And she affirmed and gave stickers on my work. And I mean, I ended up, writing really wonderful essays in high school and college and getting really remarkable grades in those areas. But I stuck to kind of the sciences. I had an affinity towards the sciences. So.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because you did go to University of Alberta, graduated there, as you said, with bachelor's in nutrition and food science.
Yes.
That's an interesting first choice, isn't it? Right, and given where you then went, you went to the National Academy of Sports Training in Lafayette, Indiana, to do corrective exercise specialist now, and a personal trainer, which is a full circle to your interest in, in sports, of course.
Yep.
But given that those first choices, Leanne, are so formative, aren't they, as to which direction you think you're going to go as a teenager. Were your parents kind of steering you in any direction, or did they let you make your own pathway?
They really facilitated my independence in terms of I never heard from my parents, and I'm very fortunate this way. I never heard from my parents, this is what you should do. And you know, they said, what do you like to do? What do you feel passionate about? Where do you see yourself helping others? And they were very encouraging and supportive of the direction that I chose. And I mean, I was a very strong-willed, I still am a strong-willed person in terms of like when I set my mind to something, I'm going to do it. And I understand I may fail, but I recognize the importance of going through that process. And I don't view the journey through life as a linear process. You kind of have to be okay with going in different directions, but ultimately I feel like you end up on a path that is destined for you in a sense. But the journey to get there or to consistently head in that direction is going to look different for everybody. But yeah, my parents were very supportive, even with my gender identity very young. They were very supportive of like, you know, me exploring that and making that my own. I think that was really powerful for me as a young person, and especially now in the arts and what I do. So yeah, very formative years for sure.
Yeah, that's wonderful that you got that kind of support. I'm wondering where the drama came in then, because you went to Westwood Community Theatre in 2005.
Yes.
Fort McMurray, Canada. That sounds like a very remote location.
Way up north. Yep. It's very remote. I mean, the most incredible northern lights or aurora borealis you'd ever see, like dancing around you. You know, I'd lay down in a soccer field and it was like I was swimming and like I was laying on my back on an ocean essentially of snow, and the world around me was northern lights. I mean, it was just incredible, the experience in the north. And it was very cold, but we also had, you know, a lot of brilliant sun, and it's a dry cold, so you get insulated and you can do most activities outdoors. But yeah, it was very, I actually picked my high school because of the dramatic arts program. They were always second in sports. But the drama teacher, Mrs. Karen Towsley, was also the city's community film director. There was a community theater, very, very, very nice community theater in Fort McMurray, which is a large city. She was the community theater director there, and she was a teacher at Westwood Community High School. And since as young as I could remember, I remember putting on like performances at family reunions and going to theater camp. And I loved acting, and I loved creating stories and telling stories. And so, you know, having gone through elementary school, doing a few plays and that kind of thing, and having that experience, I knew that for me, it was important to have an outlet where I could feel free to feel and to step outside the rigidity of academic constraints or sports constraints, where everything's very disciplined and regimented, and grow that artistic, that empathetic, that emotional part of me that I feel like a lot of our culture and society sees as weakness, or they see it as like, oh, that's not going to get you anywhere. But in truth, the dramatic arts program is a huge reason why I'm successful as a professional. It teaches you public speaking. It teaches you confidence in front of a crowd. It teaches you to let go of what other people are thinking of you. It allows you to make mistakes and to laugh. And there's a grace and an acceptance within the arts community that I don't think is really an equivalent. I don't think there's an equivalent in other communities than the arts community. And yeah, it was every year I got student of the year in that program. And every year Mrs. Telzig will be like, I can't believe I've never given this high of a grade to a student before. But it was that she would say, like, and this was true, is like, I wasn't afraid to do what other students were scared to do. I would take on the most vulnerable monologues, or pick a play that was very dark or intense or very explorative of like the human condition. And I was willing to, volunteer as tribute. I was willing to say, okay, like I'm stepping in to a character's shoes, and I'm willing to let go of what people think of me and see a character. And that was very freeing and empowering. And it made me feel fearless, to be able to do that. And now as an adult in real life, I want to do that in real life, not just on a stage. I do want to be fearless and be real. And I don't want to be an actor in my everyday life. I want to be who I am and bring that to the characters that I play. So it's a little bit of a different evolution.
Well, shedding inhibitions takes bravery, takes courage, right?
Yes.
Yeah, to just leave them outside the room and just go in there and be whoever you want to be. I'm wondering at that time then what you were watching, who your influences were when you were going through theatre, and then at the beginning of your career when you were breaking, or even as a child, when you were watching TV, what were you watching?
I'm trying to remember. I feel like I watched the standard kid cartoons and stories. But I had a real affinity to hero characters. And so like one of the most profound, like for me, it was any of the films that really had female heroines in them that were the heroes of the story. And that I really was drawn, and before those were really roles that women were in, they were typically roles that men were in. And so I think like, all of the superhero stories and all of like those action type stories, my appeal was always to the characters that were willing to sacrifice, willing to go into battle, willing to make that hard decision in order to save another person or to protect a community. And that was kind of my affinity, was towards those characters. And I think like in psychology, they call that a hero complex, maybe, or like a savior complex, but there's also like a lot of positive traits of that. And so I remember watching Demi Moore in G.I. Jane. I don't even know what year that came out in. And I was just like, what? And I was like, what? And it really like, and I've followed her career, and even with striptease and everything, and I've seen a lot more of the similarities in characters, but she's an example of someone that I saw at a young age that I was just, Sandra Bullock in Miss Congeniality, she's playing this cop, and then she steps into this role as a beauty queen, but she's still herself, and is like, no, there's just certain, movies and shows and Julia Roberts and Erin Brockovich when I was a little bit older, like, where I was very much impacted by women who were like, this is who I am. These are the skills that I have. This is what I'm going to do. And I'm willing to deal with the hardship and the conflict to do what I'm supposed to do and do what I meant to do. And even in my career, even in my undergrad as a dietitian, there was a certain formality they required. Like, oh, if you're a dietitian, you need to wear heels and a black suit. And I remember wearing white tennis shoes and being like, I wore white tennis shoes. I'd go to all the presentation. I wear the whitest tennis shoes I could find. And the professors just, if you could see a kettle steaming, like, it was that I was like, I will not conform to a standard that has nothing to do with my intelligence or ability. By what I'm wearing on my feet, and that make me competent. Also, how am I supposed to run if I need to run, or like help somebody if like I'm in these like not functional footwear that I'm, in a hospital for, hours on end or whatever. And it became very clear to me in my undergrad that what was weakness in some areas was strengths in others. So weakness in clinical setting was a strength in a community setting. And I realized sometimes it's not that we're wrong. It's just we're wrong for that environment and we're really right for other environments or other groups. And it's all about finding your purpose and your place in whatever it is you choose to do, and not seeing those no's as rejections, but as redirections to the right spaces that you need to be in. So yeah, there I went off on a tangent on that, but
it all adds up, and it all points us to really to those next stages in your career. Once you graduate, and you're not going to be wearing the heels and the suits and becoming the stereotypical dietitian. You decided to turn left and follow your love for the arts. Talk a little bit about those first steps, though, and which doors you had to break down.
It was more like the doors were my own doors that I had to break down. And I remember, moving to the Midwest and being like, okay, I'm a new mom. I could start, finding work at a hospital, or I could, get certified as a personal trainer and kind of work my own hours and work with childcare and stuff like that. And so I started making my own path in that direction. And I was playing roller derby as well. And then it just got to this point where there was this almost like this emptiness, but it's more of like if you had a plant like in your room and it needs water and it needs to be put on the windowsill to get light, it's like it's there. And that's kind of like in your life, and you're just kind of looking at it every day, or it's there, but you're like, I don't know if I want to put that work in. It's kind of like what I did. There's this part of who I am that I feel like wasn't growing, and I had to take intentional steps to water it and put it into the light. And now something beautiful started to grow within me that other people could also see and impact them in a way where they're like, oh, I love that. And I feel like that is what I did. And it was being like, okay, I know that this part of me, I don't know what that's going to help with my career or what that's going to help with, anything, but I have to honor that. And I have to acknowledge that that's there. And then I have to make intentional steps to see that grow. And I remember my husband, Steven, saying to me, would you regret it if you didn't try? And that was very true. And I was like, I don't want to live with regrets of not trying something that I know I need to do. And so, I went for it. And I just, created a profile on Backstage, which is still an active, portfolio system for actors to apply for roles and stuff like that. And I just, looked for projects that were student films or something that was entry level. And I just started getting involved in projects and trying out this film acting thing. And it was harder because it wasn't as visible, like, an audience. If you do a theater play, they'll clap for you, you get to work with people regularly and build relationships. And film is more transient, and it's kind of, you invest, then you let go. And you do that really emotional take, and then they go, okay, cut, moving on. And, you have to really be in it for the story and for yourself, like to grow as a person, because people aren't going to clap for you, all the time, or they're not going to acknowledge the work that you put in. And you really have to be invested in it as an artist to make it worthwhile. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to grow, and I wanted to affect other people through stories. So yeah, I decided I'd regret it if I didn't try. So I'm still trying. Here I am.
Well, there's a determination and also a self-confidence that you need, though, Leanne, when you're a young person, and especially breaking into an industry as public as this. As you say, you are relying on your own resources to move on from each take, right? And not wait for someone to say, well, that was good, or that wasn't,
right.
You've got to be very self-assured, self-confident. Where do you think that came from? Were you not intimidated by anything or anyone when you broke into this? I mean, it's one thing to have the support of your partner say, yeah, go for it, but it's you that has to go for it.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. I think that for me, what it came down to was just this idea of purpose, this feeling of purpose. And I mean, I think that it's hard to describe, but when you feel compelled to do something because it's in your nature, there's a responsibility, I believe, to honor that, because I feel like it's a part of my design, and like how I view the world and like how I view myself is we're all a part of something greater. And, you know, just like a body, like in studying that, everything works with, there's a system, there's a chemistry, there's a dependence, but there's all these different parts and all these different molecules. But somehow, in the grand scheme of that body working, there's this unity and there's this participation and there's this responsibility. And when there's a deficiency, when there's an injury, it affects that whole body. And like, that's kind of how I see like the world and the participation of life is like, I have myself, but I'm not just here for me. I have this purpose. And I feel like maybe a lot of the reason why there's a lot of depression is because we listen to a lot of outside voices rather than that still small inner voice, whether you believe that's intuition or the Holy Spirit or a higher power or an energy. And that could all be the same too. It's just that there is this part of us that is saying, do it. You're made to do it. Go for it. And I think like our culture really tries to tell us what success is and what it is to be happy. But I think that if we really quiet ourselves and listen to that still small inner voice, I think we find that right path. And this is me just kind of walking that is, no matter what somebody says or who's going to try to kind of get in the way of that, ultimately, I'm going to keep going in the direction I'm made to go. And if I honor that and if I walk with that, I will be successful, even if that looks differently than what I expect. And that's what keeps me going. And I want to be able to tell other people, you know, who might say they might view it as like your dream. And I think that that's accurate for people, but it's beyond that. It's like, it's my purpose. It's in the fabric of my DNA to somehow be involved in telling stories and in the same way, living out my own story. That's truth. And so that's how I would describe it. It's very intrinsic. It's very deep.
So I'm wondering if spirituality or religion play a role in your life. Are they in the background or the foreground?
I would say it's the foundation for me. You know, I think like I see myself as a very spiritual person, and how I view God and my relationship with Jesus. And ultimately, in a society that's so driven towards rules and exclusion, and you know, I mean, think about it, like the Treehouse Club, right? No girls allowed, no boys allowed in the treehouse. Like, I mean, like at a very young age, we learn like, you know, there's a club. And for me, like God is outside of those human constraints. Like, and it's just like, I believe in a master, like in a creator, and that I am created, and I do have have a design and a purpose and a plan. And so like my identity is a child of God. That's my core identity. And I think anything that is on top of that is like a bonus. But at the end of the day, like I believe, you know, I'm created with a purpose and a plan, and yeah, it makes me feel like if who could really be against me? If the creator of the universe is saying, hey, I made you, you got this, like, and it's like, if you've ever seen the film Chariots of Fire, it was actually, my derby name was Chariot of Fire. And people call me Cherry for short, but there's a part of the film when he's like, when I run, I feel the Lord's pleasure. And it was just like that. It was honestly like, when I walk and when I'm making a movie or I'm on a film set and I know, I'm like, this is where I need to be. Like, I feel like that's worship, because I'm using my life to help other people and to grow and to make mistakes. And it doesn't look perfect. And I'm really real. And I swear a lot sometimes. And and it's just like, but like, at the end of the day, like, God made me for this. And so I'm going to do it, because that's how I say, okay, thank you. I'm walking it. I'm doing it. And, as a mom, like, that's the most amazing thing. Like, I want for my kids is being like, okay, like, I made you and you've got all these gifts and talents. Like, I want them to do what they're strong at and learn where they're weak and be humble, but like, walk with confidence and assurance amidst any challenges and obstacles. And like, to me, that would make me so proud. Like, for my kid my kids to just go, I'm going to do this. And this is who I am. And I'm going to honor that by walking in truth of who I am and doing that boldly. And with that freedom is like, that's how I see my relationship with God, is like, I'm going to do that. And that's core. That's core to me, for sure.
It's a great role model then right there for your children. I'm wondering now how your parents might have described you as a young child and how they regard you now, because my parents would have said, oh, she's stubborn and determined. But it's probably just as well that they're not with us now, because I don't know what they would say.
I would say I heard that, my mom would say, she's like, I always knew you were trouble. But yeah, very, she so my father has passed away from several years ago, but like, he was always like, anything you want to do, you can do. You work hard. And of course, I mean, like, it's what you want to do. Like, if you want to do that and you're willing to work hard, like, you can. And, but yeah, those qualities of determination can also be stubborn. Like, as a Capricorn, it's a sea goat, right? Like, it's like, I'm not going to pretend that, I can be, if there's a conflict, I go towards it. Like, I'm like, how do we fix this? Or, and I've learned a lot about, patience and grace and, gentleness, and with myself too. But yeah, I think those qualities like determined, the positive is you're determined, you're self-motivated, you're disciplined. You're also adaptable and creative and quick thinking. Really being okay with like those gentle qualities, like I've learned as I've grown older, is like those nurturing qualities and those compassionate qualities and those qualities that really were taught to me growing up in male dominated environments, that those were like weaknesses that you need to suppress. And the arts were a huge avenue for me to explore that. And then being a mom, of course, you kind of tap into that. But yeah, it's a constant journey of growth and discovery. And often what I've found is we can't do it by ourselves. We can't even grow into the person we're supposed to be outside of community. I need other people to teach me and show me new things about the world, about myself. And everybody has a place and a time in our lives. And it's important to be in community. It's important to say, I need help right now. It's important to step up to help someone else. It's just, we're meant to go through life together. And that could be a lot of people. It could be a few people, but everybody has in your life, I believe, is there for a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
I'm wondering, though, now that you, at this point in your journey, when you look back at your career so far, Leanne, what would you say were those milestones professionally? Because I know once you have a family, you've got a husband, you've got children, and motherhood can change you as well. You mentioned, getting in touch with your softer side.
Yeah.
It does change a woman. I think there are changes in our personality personally. And then we've got this career that we are so driven towards as well. It's quite a balance for women. I'm wondering, when you look back, which were those turning, where were those crossroads, and how did they come about in terms of the parts as well that you got that helped change the trajectory of your journey?
I really could look at it in terms of roles in my career professionally, as in terms of evolution, like you were saying. Like, I think, is it that art imitates life is the saying? And, the first, one of the first like leading roles that I got was during COVID. It was for a feature film, and we went ahead and we were shooting it and filming it. And I remember, doing a 24-hour shoot day, basically, and being like, and then we slept for 2 hours, and then we filmed 17 more hours. We tried to made a feature film in like 4 days. It was insane. I'm in Logansport, Indiana, called Idol Girl. And it was like, the director, originally, I wasn't the person she'd envisioned, but my audition was so strong that she was like, I got to pick you. Like, yeah, I mean, like, and that was a huge testimony to me, was like a director was willing to step outside of a typecast or a stereotype to cast me in a role that then really changed my career in terms of my confidence in what I could do and my resilience and what I loved about the industry. And like, it really took someone else saying yes to involve me in a process. And that director is actually now the director of on the board of the State Theater in Logansport, and she's hosting us for my feature film right now, Extraction USA, for a theatrical showing this coming Saturday for Pride. And like, she's still very much in my life. And that was huge for me, like to have somebody believe in you early on in your career and to willing to take a risk. And then for that risk to pay off was huge for me in my step forward in my career. And there's been milestones like that the whole way. Again, Chasing Rabbits with Eric Pasquarelli was a feature film, was a mystery dramedy. And he, again, stepped outside of a stereotype and was like, oh, we're the type I was expecting. And I cast you in the lead. And I had a blast, like doing comedy and drama and bringing emotion to this role. And I just had the funnest time on set and started realizing like, oh, I have skills as a person on crew too, like, assistant directing or associate producing, like I could do this. And everything just seemed like it was an incremental step up until there was the film that we're showing right now, Extraction USA, which is a queer pool hustling, like heist movie. And it was really then, like throughout the process of filming that and putting into theatrical distribution, that I really started to reconcile my sexuality and who I am and my gender identity with that, and how a huge part of that had been suppressed so much growing up by my, I wouldn't say my faith in God, but it was like more like certain religious structures. And it was, really stepping into that authenticity, especially this month, about this is a part of myself that I accept and I identify as, and I believe that makes me a part of a community and connects, two worlds that might otherwise want to be divided, religion and sexuality. And it's just, everything is a constant evolution. We as human beings are constantly growing and changing. And I think that's beautiful. I think that's so metaphorical to life and nature around us, the seasons, everything. And so I just try to embrace that and model that in my own life. And I know that my children are watching. I know other people are watching, and I don't care about always being right or even, having a perfect journey. I just think it's important to be honest and to live authentically and be transparent about the process. Because I think like the goal really is the journey, not necessarily the destination that you're headed towards.
How do you feel about labels then?
I think growing up with an understanding of words and creative writing and like even the thesaurus is I think words are powerful in that they help us to understand. And they help us to describe our experiences and things and people, and it's language. And I think that labels are potentially helpful and then also destructive. And so, for example, someone could label me as a mom. It doesn't mean that that's my identity. It means that that is a part of who I am. Somebody could label me as a Christian, and that tells them, okay, that's a person who has a faith in Christ. Or somebody could label me, as queer, and that would tell somebody like, oh, okay, that person is a part of the LGBTQ community, or they're not heteronormative or straight. And so I do feel like labels help other people to understand parts of who we are. And so I accept that those words or those labels are a natural form of human language. And so like, I understand that. But in terms of me identifying with a particular word or label and being like, yes, like this is how I represent myself, or this is how I need people to think of me, I feel like that's restrictive. And I feel like that can be, how do I say this? It can be short-sighted. And there are many words to describe the same concept or the same person, the same thing. And I think that is important to keep in mind that that words or labels are always going to be attached to a type of subjectivity to our experience. And it could be negative, it could be positive. But I do understand them, but I don't subscribe to labeling myself or people and saying, this is what you get. Like I said, I think the best label to put on me really is child of God. And if that's a label someone wants to put on me, I would be honored. And then I have a name, and, that's how you can identify me. So is say my name.
Exactly. That's easy enough.
Yep.
Well, we all know life is unscripted, so who knows what the next part of your life is going to be, Leanne, but it's definitely going to be creative. And it's definitely going to be brave. There's a lot of things it's going to be, but for now, we're going to draw a line under this because we're going to hop over to our YouTube channel.
Wonderful.
And then extend the conversation a little bit there while we still have you. But for now, for the podcast, thank you so much for taking time to do this with me, Leanne. It's been fun.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris.
And when you have a moment, hop over to our YouTube channel. That's the Art Podcast, Art with 2 A's, where you'll find Leanne and I continuing our conversation for a little bonus content. And don't forget to scroll down the show notes where you'll find links to Leanne's social media and her website and her IMDb profile. And don't forget to give us a follow on Instagram. We're at The Art Podcast. And you can also reach us via email at theartpodcast@gmail.com. We love to hear from you, especially if you have any suggestions for guests. Do drop us a line, theartpodcast@gmail.com. And wherever you listen to your podcast, I hope you'll take a moment to share it with anyone you think might enjoy the show too. My thanks again to my guest this week, Leanne Johnson, and to you for listening. I'll be back in 2 weeks' time when my guest will be the makeup artist Farah Bunch, so I do hope you'll join me then.